Are there members of the class or visitors who have questions for Shelby Harnick? This is a unique opportunity.
Yeah.
Please identify yourself.
My name's Laura Bresnik. I'm a fourth-year cantoral student. Mr. Harnick, my question is, when the show first opened, you heard of a lot of elderly Jews of the time, perhaps, who grew up in these shtetls, or the children. They walked out during tradition because they saw the play as being insulting to them. How did that make you feel as nurses?
I've never heard that. I don't believe it.
Really?
I do not believe that.
Okay.
I've been to many, especially at the beginning of the show, I saw the show constantly. I never saw people walk out. That's,
Okay.
Well, there is a reference in the book to the Black Fiddler and a group called the Maccabees that protested against black people taking Jewish prayer shawls and
Well, there was-
desanctifying them or something.
there was a production in Bedford-Stuyvesant.
Right. Is that what you're referring to? No.
No,
No.
that's,
No, I've never heard that, and I don't believe it. The only time I saw people walk out was when we first opened in Detroit. As is always the way with the show, you leave everything in the show. You don't know what to cut yet. So that the show ran about 3 hours and 15 minutes. And towards the end of the show, people had babysitters, they had trains to catch, so they were leaving. But what was encouraging was that they were walking up the aisle backwards.
Yeah.
They wanted to see the show until they had to get out of the theater.
Yeah, sure.
No, I'm trying to think of anything along those lines, and I can't.
Where did you hear that? Story?
I had read about it, and actually, my grandfather, whom I never got a chance to meet, was actually one of those people who thought for some reason it was insulting him.
Maybe he walked out. Maybe he's the one person who walked out.
Okay.
But I can't imagine why anybody would think it was insulting.
Maybe they thought it was mocking it instead of embracing it. I don't know, but
It doesn't make any sense.
okay.
You heard that story from one of your parents?
Yeah.
And did they have any explanation?
They thought
I
it was insulting.
Have you seen the
was
show?
in the audience one
I
night.
was in the show. I love it. I love it. I want to make that very
My
clear.
wife and I
I love it.
were seeing the show one night, and across the aisle from us was a very elderly couple. They were rail thin. They looked like Holocaust survivors. They looked like they'd been in camps. You know, they were there. And at the end of Act One, during the pogrom, when the pillows were ripped and feathers began to fly, they began to gasp, and I thought they were going to have to be carried out of the theater. They were just going, you know, they were reliving something that they had lived through.
I saw that in Berlin every night
Yeah.
during that super.
Really?
Really, yeah.
There wasn't dry in the house.
Mm.
First time.
And
Other questions? Yes, Nancy?
So I'm Nancy Dubin, I'm a fourth-year cantoral student. Thank you for coming. You were talking a little bit about the music and how there was a consistent effort to make everything new. But it's based on modes that are, I don't know if they're ancient, because we say things are older than they are, because they actually came from Mount Sinai, but who knows if they... But that music probably was done before. It's just that it was being listened by American ears who aren't used to hearing the Jewish stuff. Do you think he would have?
I don't understand what you're saying.
Well, you were saying that when he was playing something, he made something and you made a reference to a song that it sounded like, something that he composed.
Oh, no, what I was saying was, Jerry was very conscious of not stealing anybody else's music.
Oh, not stealing anybody else's,
Yeah.
so it was perfectly
Not
okay to take
intentionally
from a tradition. But if
Yeah.
he knew of a
Yeah.
prayer or something, then he
Oh,
would have,
sure,
that's what
yeah.
I misunderstood.
And
Thank you.
Jerry was Hungarian, and every so often, some of that would creep into his music.
Not Yarmino mode,
Yeah.
absolutely.
But it was a tough assignment, because he wanted it to sound, have some relation to folk music, some relation to Jewish sounds, and some relation to Broadway, you know, all of those, and still be Jerry Bach. So it's not an easy thing to do, yeah.
And
Yeah,
he
it was
did-
an incredible task.
He succeeded magnificently. As
Yeah.
you can see from the analysis here, every single song has a different combination of modes.
Yeah.
Were there other?
Yeah, we had gone, sometime before we went into rehearsal, we had gone to a Hebrew actors gala It was a money raiser for the Hebrew Actors Union. And Jerry and I went because we were looking for people who might be writing the show. And there was one performer named Zvi Schooler who was cast in the show and played, I think, all 8 years and then wound up doing the movie. In the movie, he was the rabbi. At any rate, on the program of this Hebrew Actors program, a mother and daughter came out and they did a Hasidic song. And there were no words, and it was all thirds and sixths, and it was all just that kind of chanting. And I didn't know it, but Jerry was absolutely enthralled. He went home, he called me about 7 o'clock the next morning. He said, I've been working all night. I've written something I want you to hear. Meet me at my publisher's. So we met at 8 o'clock in the morning, and he played me this, and
Makes a million.
I said, oh, that, I just was rereading the chapter where Tevye says, if I were a Rothschild. And that would fit your melody very nice. If I were a Rothschild, but we'll change it, if I were a rich man.
Why did you change it? Why did you keep it?
Because it sounded more universal to say rich man than
Because
Rothschild.
the Israeli version did have.
Right.
Oh,
If I were a
Rothschild?
Rothschild.
Yeah.
So did the German, yes. Yeah.
But, and Jerry said, is it possible to preserve some of the chanting sound instead of making lyrics? I said, what a good idea. I said, but I don't know how to write that down in Yiddish. So I wrote diddle 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 the best I could do.
I thought,
then-
I
and then
heard a
zero
story
must
that he couldn't remember the words. And so
No.
that's why it was there.
I don't know where those stories come from.
No, but I just watched an interview with you on YouTube where you told this story, and there's a little more to it, because when you took it to Zero Mastel,
Oh, when we gave the song to Zero, he said, I'm not gonna sing diddle diddle diddle. He said, I grew up singing this kind of music, I can do that. I said, fine, I hope you can.
so Yiddish Skat.
Yeah,
basically.
sure, yes, yeah, it's wonderful, yeah,
Yes.
Yiddish Skat.
So good questions. Does anyone else have a question?
This is somewhat of a silly question, but I know
I'll give you a silly answer.
cantors vary on whether they say yada da da or yabba ba ba ba. What made you choose one versus the other?
It was just arbitrary. It's just arbitrary, totally.